In this section, we're going to take a look at UVing our character and exporting some maps from ZBrush with our normal map and displacement map detail, so you can get an idea of the complete process of building out a character. Now, UVs are how we texture objects. We project detail onto a two-dimensional map and then reproject it onto a three-dimensional surface. And to do this, we need to unfold our asset. Now, when you do a read topology, the UVs are going to be a complete mess. So what we're going to want to do is just get rid of these and start out with a camera-based projection. Do a camera-based projection. The purpose of the camera-based projection is it covers everything with UVs, so that way we have what we need right away. Now, after this, we're going to chop up the body a bit into different segments based on how a human is kind of constructed. Now, what's a good example of how to chop up a human? Clothing is a good example. So let's go ahead and start out with one of the more obscure areas, which is the head. Generally with the head, you're going to go somewhere along the neckline. Depends on the topology somewhat. Usually I like to come down towards the base of the head. You could even come down here to even the neckline. Really just kind of depends on where you want to place it. In this case, because we might adjust the jawline, change those things up, it might morph the UVs. I'm going to come about mid-neck and just come in here and do a cut. And that's going to chop off the head here and turn the head into its own section. Now, with that set up there, we can go ahead and start to cut this up in different ways to prep the head. So I like to think of this a bit like a Halloween mask and how they're set up. Let's go ahead and isolate the body so we don't see the eyes anymore. One of the ways we're going to make this like a mask is we're going to cut out the eye sockets. At this point, if you want to turn on object symmetry or world symmetry to X, you can. I'll go ahead and set it to object. For the eyes, we're going to come along the edge here, and you can either do the exterior or the interior. It doesn't really matter because they're so close. You can double click that, and you can go ahead and do a cut to separate out the eyes from the eye cavity here. So if I come over and separate these, you'll see those will be separate. We're going to do the same thing on the mouth. I usually like to come in here and find about the midsection of the lip, double click there where it kind of turns down. Once again, if you want to go one after, you can. It doesn't really matter too much in this area, but we're going to select that and do a cut. And that will separate out that UV. So we have the head here. For the ears, I like to just cut these off into their own section. And one of the nice things about doing this radial edge loop is we can actually just double click along the base here to get this and remove it very easily from the head. So we can go ahead and do a cut and we can remove that there. So now we just have that ear hanging out in its own place. With these all set, we can select the head UVs and do a modify unfold using the unfold 3D. In case you don't see the unfold 3D in the options, you can come up here to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and make sure that it's loaded. You'll see unfold3d.mml is going to be what we want. But you can go ahead and click Apply on that, and it will go ahead and unfold these for us. All right, so you're going to see that's going to give us a pretty unflattering look to this. Very flat, and if you look at the distortion, a lot of distortion here. Now, the trick to this is to cut it like a Halloween mask. If you think about a Halloween mask, it has a slit down the back that you fit your face into. So what we can do is come about midway on the hairline here, and then just shift double click to the very base of the neck, and we can go ahead and cut that. And it's good to place it along the hairline because most of that's going to be covered up and won't yield a UV seam. And we can go ahead and do an unfold on that, and that should give us a nicer looking UV for the head. So you'll see something like that will work out nicely for those head UVs. As far as the inner mouth goes, this is okay. There's really no issue with this. If you wanted to, you could put a split on it. Where I would probably put a split for this is on the bottom because the tongue's going to cover that. So we could just shift double click down to here and cut this. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day, if I'm going to be completely honest, because you're not going to see that interior and it's not an area we need to spend a whole lot of time texturing. But it also just kind of depends on what you're making. So there are circumstances where cutting that might be a good idea, but you can do a modify unfold on that, and that will relax the interior a bit more, give us good mouth shape. The eye sockets, same deal. These ones, interestingly enough, are kind of catching a little bit on the inside there. I would think the unfold 3D would relax them better, but it's not, but that's okay. So that's going to be the base sort of setup here for the head. Now you're probably thinking, wow, that looks awful. Yeah, it does. We're going to do a layout at some point here to kind of get these placed. But the first thing I like to do is just kind of cut things up to get them into place. All right. So that is going to be the UV setup for the head there. Let's go and work our way down to the torso. For the torso, you want to think of this as a shirt. So we're going to have the holes for the sleeves. And what's nice is with how we've set up these arms here, we kind of naturally have those. You want to place these UVs on things that are not necessarily going to be obvious, and quite often things that you're not going to add or subtract when you're doing a base mesh. So for example, this edge here running around the shoulder and under the armpit, it's not likely I'm going to remove that, but this extra edge loop here, I might, depending. So I'd prefer to place it here for something like a base mesh, just because that's a little bit more permanent, and we can go ahead and cut that, and that's going to give us our sleeves, so to speak. The other aspect of the torso is it generally comes to an end. Now, there's a couple different ways you can approach this. You could cut this in half to kind of get an area for the pants, or you could treat this as kind of like a leotard, cutting along the groin here and coming along the backside. And this is usually a little bit better approach. You do have to kind of make a judgment call here on the buttocks. And what I'm going to do is deselect along here, maybe, and kind of look at where these go and resolve it using these. Now, this is where things get kind of interesting. You have to decide how you want to do this exactly. We could come along here down the sacrum and do a cut there. That would be okay. We could also just come straight across here, which might be okay as well, to kind of create a separation between the pant area. I might take a completely different approach, though, looking at this, and just cut it down here at the pant area for the leg to begin with. So right under the gluteus. Let's go ahead and do that. And the reason why is, once again, we might rearrange some of the topology here. Now, the last thing for the torso is generally doing a cut underneath the arms to create a front and the back. So we're going to come down here, and I like to do this as down the middle as I can. Just go ahead and do a cut down the side. And since we're mirrored, that'll do both sides. But now, if I select the torso topology and do a modify unfold, we'll get a front and back of the body. You'll notice up here, we got stuck, and down here, we got stuck. So underneath the groin, we're going to want to place a cut here. And if you look on your pants, at least for males, I can't say for females because I have not worn female pants. There is usually a seam right there in that area. And then on the shoulders, you're noticing there's a seam here on most shirts. So kind of the standard t-shirt style clothing. And there you go. You're going to end up with these two chunks that represent the front and back of the body. Moving into the arms, we can come in here to the wrist and we can cut this off at where the sleeve would go. So we'll just go ahead and do a cut there, and that's going to give us two sleeves. If you look at how your sleeves are constructed on your clothes, make sure you don't miss an edge there. The way your sleeves are connected on your clothes is with a single line, cutting them in half. So what I like to do is find the bottom line of the arm. You like to use the bottom line so that you're hiding your UV seams as much as possible. And we're just going to go from that edge down to here, just shift double click and cut. And that's going to give us our arms. So we can go ahead and do a modify unfold. And there you go. That's going to cut those out. For the hands, we're going to create these like a glove. The way gloves go is they generally have a line down the middle of them that's sewn together. So I like to try and find the middle area of the fingers and just double click across there. And you'll see that's what I'm getting. And then I just kind of resolve it out to the corners from there. Depending on how you've connected yours, you may have something more or less smooth than what I have here. The way I try and set up that topology so I can cut right across those fingers and do an unfold and just get those set up there. So at this stage, we've done everything but the legs. Let's just see how those look. Do a quick layout here, and you'll see that's how those fingers turned out. They look a bit like that, kind of like gloves. Now, the one thing we can do with the fingers that does help them a little bit is we can sew them back together along an edge. Usually it's the outer edge here. So I'm just going to come and double click from the tip of the finger down to the base, and then shift click that last one, and just do a cut, move, and sew. And then we can unfold those again. So just modify unfold. And there you go. Now we have decent looking hands that have one less UV seam. And you can see how those would look like the pattern of a glove that you would cut out. The last area is the legs, and they are very much the same as the arms. We're going to double click down here to create what would be our pants cuff. We could go even lower here to the area that turns away. Nothing wrong with that. Do a quick cut. For the seams of the legs, you generally put it on the inside. You'll notice that is generally the same case with your pants. Most pants have the seam on the inside, and just like we hide the seams on the pants, we want to hide the seams on our character. So we can go ahead and cut those. You can then perform an unfold on the legs. So I'm just going to select these in UV shell mode and unfold. And there you go, leg UVs. The last area is the feet. The feet I handle like a shoe. The main way I like to do that is to double click along the toes here to create a top and bottom of the foot. And then I usually continue along the backside by just shift double clicking, wrapping around the heel to the other side. But you'll notice mine don't match here, so I can't do that. That's one of those things I probably should have thought about when I was doing the topology, but it's okay. We can approach it differently. It just depends on how we do want to approach it. We still want to cut down the sides of the toes, but we might approach it differently by maybe cutting out the toes individually here, like so. So that's, no, we don't want to. Let's just double click those toes. And what I'm going to do is control click here. We're going to shift click down to the heel here till they match. And then we're just going to shift click around the foot here the best we can to connect these. I don't know why it's giving me such a weird result. I guess I should have checked my foot topology's connections around the sides more accurately, because they are kind of doing this spiral thing here. And this is something that's not really ideal. So this is an area I might want to rework, but it's not really a big deal if we don't. But it isn't ideal here. But the main idea you want to have when you're doing a foot is you want to have sort of a half-cut top-bottom part where you have a top part of the foot and basically a heel part, kind of like a shoe. So I'll go ahead and unfold there, and you'll see that lays out okay. I may want to fix those feet topologies, just as a side note. But the last thing to do is just cut down the backside here, do a cut on that backside, and then unfold those. And what we end up with is this nice shoe-like structure. All right, so that's a quick crash course on how to break up the human UVs. Basically, you're just thinking of it as how you would create clothing where the seams are on clothing. So let's delete the history on this and save real quick, and then do a quick layout, and then we can get this guy out of here. All right, so the last thing I want to do is just kind of straighten these up and lay them out. To do that, I have to turn off symmetry. I'm going to come over here into the UV shell mode and just rotate these to be vertical. I want these to just kind of be as straight as possible. And as far as the UV layout goes, I'm not too worried about getting it perfect because this is for a base mesh. These UVs are going to be adjusted later. They're just here as a launch point to kind of help us have something in place in case we need it on a short notice. And that's kind of the purpose of having a base mesh, just to give you something to do a quick launch from when you have a tight deadline. Or when you want to match multiple rigs to the same body type. That is also a good option. So let's get these set and move these over. And with the ears, just kind of square them up. That should be good. And eye cavities, I don't care too much, but it's good to keep these straight. And we should be good. So once you have these all in place, you can do a modify a layout, go into the option box here, and we can just pack this to be the correct size. So I'll leave this at a 1024 setting. I don't see an issue with that. A couple things we're going to want to change. You're going to want to make sure that shell pre-rotation is off. Shell pre-scaling, you want to go ahead and set to preserve 3D ratios. That's going to make this proportionate to the body parts. Down here, have translate shells on, so it moves them. For the texture map size, we can go ahead and set our map size in the appropriate padding. In this case, I'm going to use 1024 and 8x8 and just hit apply, and that will lay those out nicely. So once this is done, just do another delete all by type history and save, and we are good to go. We can call this good for our quick UV layout that will allow us to check our textures and also have some base UVs on here for creating characters in the future. All right, so as a challenge, what I want you to do is go ahead and lay out your UVs for this character, get those set up real quick. So that way you can check your textures, make sure they're looking good, and get something out of ZBrush into Maya with all the detail that you've put in.